Today's Manna 가스펠 라이프 철치 데니얼 킴 목사가 보내드리는 시간입니다.
Hello to the friends and family of KCBS. My name is Daniel and welcome to today's Manna. I remember a season of my life when I just got married. I made a lot of mistakes. As you can imagine, I'm sure this happens a lot in people's marriages. But a lot of the times when I was married, I was all about being efficient. I was all about being fast. I was all about being productive. I was a busy man. I took on a lot of the roles. And I remember telling my wife saying, hey, I'm going to take care of this. I'm good at this. I'm going to cook. I'm good at this. I'm going to drive. I'm good at this. And I'm going to plan out the trip. And then what happened was at one point of our marriage, my wife was like saying, hey, I really like doing things with you. And doing things with her, it required me to slow down and match her tempo. And there is something that you and I must remember is that our job is not to just work hard and get the job done, but our job is also to pursue unity that God anoints us. Psalm chapter 133 verse 1 says this, how good and pleasant it is when God's people live together in unity. And I also think about a letter that Paul writes to the church of Ephesus, Ephesians chapter 4 verse 3, where he says, make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. And you must remember that unity does not happen automatically. Because Paul says make every effort because unity requires intentional choices. And it's especially from the leaders. And unity is not being absent from conflict, but rather it's a presence of commitment. It's choosing to protect trust and assuming the best and keeping the mission bigger than our preferences. And a unified team is actually unstoppable because the Spirit loves to work where there is peace. And I think the challenge that you and I must remember is, each of us brings something different to the table. But today, I think one of the things that you must remember is saying, hey, I'm here for the mission and I'm here for the team. And a couple of things that I want to discuss to you about unity here this morning. First, I want you to remember that unity is a gift, but keeping unity is actually our job. Because Paul says this in Ephesians chapter 4. He says God gives unity, but we actually guard unity, right? Because unity does not drift into our staff and our worship team, our volunteers, or our church, it becomes a problem. And this is why unity is something you must be fighting for daily, because every one of us brings our own personality, our preference, and our pace. And unity is not automatic, but rather it is intentional. And secondly, you must remember that unity is more than getting along, but rather it's carrying the same mission. Biblical unity is not just that we don't hate each other, but rather we're running towards the same direction. You know, Jesus prays in John chapter 17. He says that they may be one so that the world may believe. Our unity is not just for internal peace. Our unity is evangelistic. A united team becomes a living sermon that the world cannot ignore. You must remember that teams fall apart when mission becomes blurry. But team grows stronger when everyone is surrendered to the same why. When the mission is clear, your egos shrink. When the mission is unclear, your egos expand. And lastly, you must remember that unity releases God's anointing. Psalm chapter 133, it continues by saying unity is like oil that's poured on Aaron's head. That oil represents God's anointing, God's favor, and God's empowerment. Means that if you want God's power in your ministry, you need to protect unity. If you want God's blessing on your plans, you also protect unity. And if you want God's presence in your meetings, your rehearsals, your campus, you protect unity. Because this unity drives up anointing, and unity attracts it. And lastly, unity is not easy, because unity requires 3 sacrifices. If you want a united team, here are the sacrifices that makes unity possible. 1 is sacrifice of pride. 2, sacrifice of preferences. 3, sacrifice of assumptions. And healthy teams communicate before they get offended. Lastly, unity is our witness. Jesus tells us, by this everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. Not by our buildings, not by our gifts, not by our sermons, but by our unity that is expressed in love. A united staff becomes a spiritual force. A united church becomes a lighthouse. A united team becomes a testimony that makes Jesus alive. I want to ask you here today, what do you need to release for the sake of unity? And what assumption do you need to drop? Because God anoints a united team.
지금까지 가스펠 라이프 철치의 데니얼 킴 목사였습니다. 성경이나 예수 그리스도에 관해서 더 알기를 원하시는 분은 시카고 기독교 방송 전화 847-583 영원 구원으로 연락 바랍니다.